We'll call this meeting of the House Government Operations Standing Committee to order. Welcome to committee, staff, and public. Appreciate your attendance. We have a very ambitious agenda. We will begin with a motion to approve the minutes. Representative Daw moves that we adopt the minutes as printed. Any discussion from committee members? All in favor of adopting those minutes, say aye. Aye. Appears to be unanimous. We'll move immediately to the first item on the agenda, House Bill 119, straight ticket voting amendments. Representative Arent, welcome. You're free to present your bill.
Thank you very much. And I will be presenting this with my co-sponsor, Representative Jeremy Peterson. This bill eliminates the option to check one box or press one button to automatically vote for all candidates in one political party. Now, voters will still be able to vote for all of the candidates in one political party by voting in each individual race. In other words, one size doesn't always fit all. I think the first part of this presentation, I think the most important thing you need to hear right now is the history of how we got here. And I will ask Representative Peterson if he could present that.
Okay, thank you. You guys should have on your desk a handout with some fun graphics on it. Basically, back in the 1800s, 1700s, rather than the counties having control over the ballot, each of the respective parties back in the day would print their own ballots, and they would then distribute those ballots to, the voters, and then the voters would take that ballot to their polling place and drop the ballot that they received in the box. Of course, when the party was printing their ballot, they would put their candidates on it, and it was highly likely that somebody would vote straight ticket, hence that ballot being the ticket. On polling day, it was possible for some folks to vote, to break out from that straight ticket voting, but it was difficult. Also, prior to about 1890, we did not have a secret ballot. So the ticket that was printed by the parties would be made to be a certain color or a certain shape, and then the poll watchers that would be at the ballot box that day would be watching to see who came in to vote, and particularly what color the ballot they placed in the box was. And so you can imagine what kind of pressures that put on voters, and how they voted. It was a very probably an unfair process, to say the least. So in the 1890s, the secret ballot came out, and this was an innovation. You look here, and the graphic on the right of the page has what we call the Belgian-style ballot. And when secret ballots came out, the parties were placed at the top of the ballot with a line going down the middle, and then the candidates for each office were placed on either side of that line, with the big race usually at the top of that column, and then the smaller offices progressing down to the bottom. And then eventually we got to the ballot that we have today, where on the form, the races are grouped according to the race rather than to the party, and the candidates are labeled with their respective parties, but they're grouped according to the office that they're running for. So the straight ticket voting option that we have is sort of a relic, an antiquated relic from decades and even centuries ago, where the parties had control over the ballot exclusively, and it has been this sort of kind of a legacy style of voting that's been available. And so with that, we're proposing to basically end this practice of straight ticket voting and have the voters deliberate specifically on those candidates that are in the box, and to ask the voter to use their discernment in making those choices. And I'll turn it back over to Representative Arent to make some practical points on that.
Thank you very much, Representative Peterson. This is really an outdated mode of voting, as you've heard. Utah is only one of 9 states that still has this method of voting. In fact, no Western state, none of our neighbors use this method of voting. In fact, the trend over the past few years across the United States has been to eliminate this type of voting. I brought this bill a few years ago. It did lose in committee by 1 vote. And since then, the trend has changed. In the last few years, it has been eliminated in Wisconsin, North Carolina, Rhode Island, West Virginia, and Michigan. One of the real problems with straight ticket voting is it confuses voters. Sometimes they come in and I will say I've got to give the county clerks credit. They've done their best to educate people, but it's actually much more of a problem now with mail-in ballots, and that, is, of course, is the trend in our state than it is when you actually go to a polling location and press buttons there. There's no notification when you have a mail-in ballot that you've missed something. So often what they'll do is that voters will check that box and mail back in the ballot, forgetting that they haven't voted for the judges, the school board members, on propositions or constitutional amendments. Or maybe they'll even skip voting in races they wanted to vote on. Let's say, for example, no person from my political party was running in a certain race. Maybe they dropped out. Maybe they were never there in the first place. If I'd known that, I might have wanted to vote for someone else. So that is often very confusing. I've actually had people come up to me with all kinds of other confusion. They've said to me, "Oh, I'm so excited. I voted for you. I voted straight ticket Democratic." And I'll look at them and I'll say, "Oh, have you moved recently?" And they'll say, "No." Well, they don't even live in my district, but they didn't know because they never saw the names. Or I've had people say that they've walked up to someone and said, "Oh, I voted for you. I voted straight ticket Republican," and that person wasn't running as a Republican. Another thing they do is they confuse the box with what they're thinking they're supposed to mark their party affiliation. So they say, "Oh, I'm registered as a Republican, I'm supposed to mark that," or "I'm registered as an independent, I'm supposed to mark that." Some people just think it's looking for their choice of kind of philosophy. For example, personal choice. One year in Salt Lake County, 13,726 people voted straight ticket for personal choice, which was just under 14% of the vote. Personal choice, because they wanted to do their personal choice. You also have a lot of people that will vote independent American, because after all, they're an independent American. So there is a lot of confusion with this method of voting, and it's only going to be getting worse as we have more and more people voting with our mail-in ballots. I would be happy to answer any clarifying questions. I know there are maybe 1 or 2 people here to testify.
Did you want me to present?
Oh, excuse me. Representative Peterson has some more information to present.
Thank you, Representative Peterson. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So there are some practical implications to the current election process that we find ourselves in, and how straight ticket voting could actually produce some unintended outcomes. Right now, with our 2-door process that's available to us, 1 through convention, or number 2 through the petition process, basically anyone with $6,000 can write a check to a vendor and purchase their spot on the ballot, on the primary ballot. The individuals that do this may or may not reflect the party or the values of the party that they are running under on that ballot. So this creates kind of a conundrum for the parties. The parties have lost a lot of the control that they have over the quality of the candidate that appears with their label next to it. They've lost some of the ideological value that's in those candidates because of this process. The last check that's available to really discern between what is a candidate that carries those party values and what doesn't is the voter themselves. And it may be because of this straight ticket voting option that somebody could get on the ballot that doesn't represent those values but gets elected anyway. Just to give you let's give you a scenario here. Let's say that Representative Arent falls in love with Utah County for some reason, and decides to relocate, and let's say that she relocates to Representative Grover's district. But she loves being in office. That's something that she knows she can do well. In her district, where she's at now. She's considered a thoughtful, open-minded representative. In Utah County, they have other names for that. So they both file for office. She knows that if she really is going to get back into office, she'll have to align, or at least have the label of the dominant party that's prevailing in that area. And so she does that. And then let's say that the candidate she's running against forgets to file a financial disclosure, or gets sick, or maybe even moves out of his own district, which I know representatives in Utah County do that on occasion accidentally. Maybe that happens. And then we have this unlikely scenario, but possible, where she is now pretty much by default, due to the prevailing voting tendencies in that area, she is now elected to office as a member of a party that her values and traditional voting record may not necessarily represent or reflect. And so there's this possibility of the convolution of that brand. And so when straight ticket is an option, the voters don't necessarily consider that possibility. And this is a new possibility, something that we've not had to confront before, but which is certainly possible moving forward in time with future election cycles. If we go to candidate-specific voting, partisan candidate-specific voting, it will do several things. First off, is I believe it will energize the parties, because the parties have sort of depended on straight ticket voting to a certain degree. They've leaned on that. This will energize them to get their message out, to recruit better quality candidates that the voters can deliberate between. It will provide for more marketing and greater discourse among the public on the issues, on the candidates themselves and their qualifications. I believe it creates an environment where it encourages the voters to make that conscientious choice and to make a more educated choice. And so that's why I'm supporting the bill. A little factoid, we had my county clerk, who has to be in another room across the hall right now, he ran some numbers on, and I had him run them on my race back in 2008. That was an election that I lost, but I was running against an incumbent from the other party who was expected to win. The difference between, and that's why you see this picture on your flyer is actually, you see that there's President Obama's yard sign and then my sign in the yard. Obviously, we belong to two different political parties. That race, if you excluded straight ticket voting from the figures, it created a 6% swing in those results. And that's in a competitive race, which is where this policy would really have impact, is in those competitive districts. That's not something to bat an eye at. That's a significant figure. So anyway, I believe that the policy would energize these races and really create a lot more interest in the political process doing it this way.
Thank you. Does that conclude your presentation?
It does. Thank you.
Representative Arent?
It does.
We'll go to the committee for clarifying questions. Representative Cox.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. 2 points. The flyer that says parties have lost a degree of control over brands and candidates, I think there's at least one party that's fighting that. But the concern that I have, because as near as I can remember, I've never voted straight party. Many times when I got to the bottom of the ballot, I had voted for all of one particular party, but I didn't actually hit a button and just that was my count. Now, in some cases, I got to the bottom of the ballot and I didn't vote for all one party. But the question I have is, in races that I'm very familiar with, there may be 300 or more, a fairly good-sized percentage, depending on the race, of people that don't vote in that particular race. In other words, they'll vote for president, they'll vote for county mayor, but they won't vote for the House of Representatives race, for example. And they'll just skip that. And oftentimes, the number of people that don't vote in that race could have made the difference as far as who won. Now, if in my particular area, there's a certain percentage, a fairly large percentage of people that vote straight party, and I'm not necessarily thinking that that always helps me. Sometimes it doesn't. But the question, the most important question that I have on this concept, because I'm kind of torn, is will that decrease the number of people that are voting for races further down the ballot than what they currently are? Because obviously we want as many people voting as possible.
We certainly do want as many people voting as possible, and I can't give you numbers on that. I certainly know there's a significant drop-off when people vote straight ticket and miss major constitutional amendments and other things. So I have talked to legislators in other states. They have not had that concern. I most recently spoke with a Democrat in Michigan, and she was wondering why I was crazy enough to run this, given the fact that straight ticket voting helps Democrats so much more in Salt Lake County. But that was not a concern they had. I mean, yes, there's drop-off. We know there's going to be drop-off. We know people are going to skip certain races because they don't know the names or they haven't been contacted. Probably it's good for candidates to realize that they do need to make an effort and contact people and have their name be known. So I'm not sure that I have an answer to say how it's going to affect your individual race, but I know it's a concern. I know that when I went to vote last time, I go through and I do tend to vote for people in one political party, and I got to the race for what I thought was for my race, and there was, due to an unusual fluke, which will probably never happen again, the stars had to align, I went to vote in my particular race, and my name was not on the ballot. I was a bit concerned when I saw that. I actually didn't want to vote for somebody in a different House district. I would have never seen that had I voted straight ticket.
Thank you.
Thank you. Chair has a question. Will you address the concern expressed to me by several of my elderly constituents, including my 92-year-old mother, who really like the option of voting straight party because, not that they're ill-informed, because they do their best to be informed. They watch the debates, they read the literature to the degree they can. Many of them have macular degeneration or cataracts. But they know they want to vote. They want to exercise that right. How do you address that?
Well, and we have someone here from the county clerk's office who may be better able to address that. But, you know, I helped my father when he was 95 go through the ballot. And it isn't that much of an effort. But if it's making it easier for them to vote straight ticket, does that mean they're going to skip all of those other races? I mean, there are a lot of judges on the ballot. There are propositions. There are constitutional amendments. Frankly, those votes overwhelm sometimes the number of partisan races. And we certainly do not want them to skip those races because those are really important too.
Thank you. Any other questions from the committee? Seeing none, we'll go to public comment. Are there members of the public that wish to comment? We would start right here with this lady. If you'd come and introduce yourself and who you might represent and sign the roster there as a witness. Welcome.
Thank you. My name is Nicola Nelson. I represent the League of Women Voters of Utah. We support this bill. As you've heard me say before, we believe that Utah citizens are intelligent individuals who can make educated decisions regarding the individuals that represent them. We think elimination of straight ticket voting would encourage voters to conduct more research before marking the ballot. And this is especially true, has been said, for vote by mail ballots. And again, it would help to ensure that nonpartisan choices, such as judges or changes to the Constitution, are carefully considered by the voter. And perhaps it would reduce the party polarities now found in our national politics. As has been said, only 9 states still have straight ticket voting. It is time Utah's election process becomes more about individual candidates and less about political parties. Utah should join the 41 states who have already eliminated straight ticket voting. Voting is one of our most fundamental rights, yet Utah has an abysmal record of voter participation. The feeling of my vote doesn't matter might be less prevalent if candidates had to be considered individually. The League of Women Voters of Utah believes elimination of the straight party vote will enhance the role of citizens in the election and the legislative processes. Please support HB119. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to go to Mr. Evans. Welcome.
Thank you for allowing me to speak. First of all, how much time do I have? Because I could go on all day on this one. So
Just a couple minutes.
Okay. All right.
We do need you to state your name and who you represent.
James Evans, Chair of the Utah Republican Party. Well, let me try to summarize it because I'm just all over the place on this. There's just so many things I want to just rebut, but I'll get to the crux of it. First of all, what I've heard today, there's not been one bit of information that was evidence-based research. Anything that you can substantiate has been conjecture. It's been hypotheticals. It's been anything but something that you can grab a hold of and say, this is the research and this is what it shows. So I would think as lawmakers you would want something that can be demonstrated or reproduced. Other than that, it's like saying the rooster crows when the sun comes up and the rooster crows, so which is it? Does the sun come up because the rooster crows? That's what you're dealing with here. But on the 9 states that are left, it's Alabama, Indiana, Iowa, Kentucky, Oklahoma, Pennsylvania, South Carolina, Texas, and Utah are the 9 remaining states that are straight party. Of those, 7 of them are very conservative states. So I certainly, that's something I can certainly support. But I think it's important that we not take a convenience away from voters because they identify with a political party and penalize them and say because they're going to vote for that particular party, and that's what they're doing, even if they don't know all the candidates, they know if they vote for a Republican, they can count on that candidate to be slow to raise taxes, support families. I mean, the list can go on and on and on. But to say that because they don't vote down ticket for nonpartisan races is because they vote straight party, I can give my own example. It's not every time that I vote on judges because sometimes I don't even know who they are. Mm-hmm. So I think I'm very engaged and very informed, but there are times I don't complete my ballot all the way down ticket. So it has nothing to do with straight party. Now, I just gave you an assertion that's not based on any evidence-based research, just as the representative gave her assertions. So I appeal to you as lawmakers to just simply say, if you're going to pass a law, you need some kind of evidence to back up what you're doing. And to date, I have heard no evidence. All I've heard is conjecture and inference, and based on that, I think that this bill is something that should not pass this body. Thank you.
Thank you. I think there's one more individual back here. Ma'am, come forward, please. Welcome.
Hi, I'm Roseanne Mitchell. I'm the election director for Salt Lake County. We have found, as Representative Arent has stated, that it does cause some voter confusion. Back in 2006, when the Personal Choice Party was on the ballot, I don't think it was entirely their name because they did have a really cute smiley face next to their name as the party emblem. It also happened to be the first year that we implemented our new electronic voting equipment. So voters would select the Personal Choice Party and they'd click the next page on the voting machine, and it comes up and it has now selected all of it's cast a vote for the candidate with that political party. And it caused a lot of confusion for voters because they'd say, well, this machine just voted for me. No, you cast those votes because you selected straight party. And we found that a lot of voters didn't fully understand how the straight party functionality really did work. And so there was a huge education piece that was involved in that. Even when they do vote straight party and they think they know what they're doing, that they're going to vote these races, they very often scratch vote or crossover vote and don't really realize that they do that, and even undervote races that we, unfortunately, I end up getting the calls from the upset voter after they hit submit ballot or cast ballot at a polling place. So they call me and they say, well, I went through and they were checked, so I unchecked them. And did my votes count? No. If there was no X next to a candidate's name, then it didn't count a vote for any candidate if they went through and then later deselected the X next to the candidate. And we find that that happens through several counties. I've talked to my peers in other counties, and they find that very often voters will deselect the vote and then undervote the races, and when they thought that they were actually voting the race because the straight party box was checked. And it does cause some problems on the paper ballots as well. A voter will check the straight party box, and then they still go through and they vote the races. They do a lot of crossover voting at that point too. From a purely selfish standpoint, as an election administrator, I'm just going to throw out there that it also takes up a ton of real estate on our ballot. And Salt Lake County is facing this year for the first time ever a 2-card ballot, which will cause voters a lot of confusion when they have 2 pieces of paper and they have to send them both back to us. And so that's a huge chunk of real estate. And that's purely selfish as an election administrator and not necessarily from a voter standpoint. But we are, Salt Lake County Clerk's Office and the Election Division is in favor of this bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any further public comment? Seeing none, we'll return to the committee for potential action. Representative Perry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I make a motion we pass HB119 out with a favorable recommendation.
That motion is in order. Is there discussion to the motion? Seeing none, we'll allow the sponsor to sum.
Thank you, and I will also defer to my co-sponsor if he has comments he would like to make. Representative Draxler, you raised a point that I probably could have answered better. You talked about senior citizens. And I think one of the real joys of having the vote-by-mail ballot at home is that it gives them time. You're right, they go to the elections location and they get flustered. Sometimes they're sitting there, they're there alone. Checking one box is probably easier. But that's not what we're doing now. We're sending people ballots throughout our state. So having some time to go through individual names, I think, isn't a problem, particularly if they have a friend or a relative that can come over to help them. Again, I want to remind the committee, there is no Western state that does this. Not our most conservative neighbors allow voting by this method. We are one of only 9 states, and the states that have eliminated it in the past few years, 4 of them have been by Republican sponsors, 3 by Democrats. This does not penalize voters. They can still go through, as I did last time, and vote for everyone in the same political party. They're just going to have to look at the names. I know that there was a request for data, but some of that data just doesn't exist. Believe me, I've also requested it. I've asked the Lieutenant Governor's office for that. They don't have it. We have a lot of information, and we also know what other states have looked at. Straight ticket voting by one box causes a lot of confusion, whether it's people who have thought they voted for someone that they didn't vote for, whether it's people who think they're done and then skip all the rest of the races, whether it's people who think that it's just asking for their opinion and they like personal choice or being an independent American, whether it's people who think it's just asking for party affiliation. There's a lot of confusion. I've talked to sitting state court judges who've made mistakes on this. I think it's now time to do away with this very outdated method of voting. And please, I encourage you to pass HB 119. Thank you.
Representative Peterson, do you have something to add?
Yeah, just I want to thank the committee for the time they've given to us to present this, and this is a policy that I believe will bring the people closer to their elected representatives, and I hope it can have your support. Thank you.
Thank you. To the maker of the motion for summation, Representative Perry.
I just appreciate both of the representatives bringing this issue to us in a bipartisan manner and sharing with us both of their experiences from both directions, and so I encourage everybody to support it.
Thank you. The question before the committee is to pass out with a favorable recommendation House Bill 119, straight ticket voting amendments. We'll do a voice vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Nay. We need those who vote nay to raise their arms, please.
We lost.
I'm surprised.
The motion fails by a vote of 4 in favor, 6 against. The ones, we'll note those who voted in favor. That's a smaller number. That would have been Representative Arent, Representative Chavez-Hauk, Representative Grover, and Representative Perry. Thank you very much.
Thank you.